For the first time in my career as a therapist, more men are coming to me than ever before, and they all come for the exact same reason: relationships. Specifically, they want to talk about their role as a protector and provider, but many of them say this: no matter what I do, it still feels like it's not enough. At the same time, women tell me something very different. They feel like the men they date or the man they're with isn't quite masculine enough. They don't feel protected, they don't feel provided for, they don't feel taken care of in the way they hoped. So on one side you have women feeling like men are not stepping up. On the other side you have men feeling like nothing they do is enough. And when I look deeper into these relationships, I noticed something interesting. Most of them shared the same root cause. So in this video I'll break down 4 things: where your expectations come from, why some women feel like the men they're with are never quite masculine enough, how to tell whether the issue is your expectations or his behavior, and what healthy expectations in a relationship actually look like. And if you're new here, I'm Jasmine, I'm a therapist, and I specialize in helping people understand how their past experiences shape how they see themselves today, how to develop a stronger sense of self and self-esteem. If this is something you're interested in, feel free to subscribe. And today we're going to look at how that plays out in relationships, especially in the expectations we place on our partners. And once you see this, you might start looking at your relationship very differently. So the first question is, where do your expectations come from? Your expectations of what a man should be like, what you need and what you expect from a partner. And it often goes back to one relationship in particular, the relationship you had with your father growing up. Because your father is usually the first man responsible for protecting and providing for you in your most vulnerable years. So the first question we have to look at is, was your father present? Yes or no? By present, I mean, was he physically around, or was he absent because he passed away or due to separation or divorce, moved away, or was rarely present because of work or other commitments? And if he was present, the second question is, did you feel protected and provided for? Yes or no? And I'm not asking, did he try his best? Or did he everything he could? Or was he working hard? The question is, did you feel protected and provided for? If the answer to either question is no, you develop one of 3 patterns in your romantic relationships. The first pattern is what I call the bare minimum trap. You develop very low expectations on what you deserve, especially from men. Because if your father was highly critical, or he made you feel like you weren't enough, or if he wasn't present at all and you felt abandoned, and it doesn't actually matter why he wasn't present, whether he passed away or due to separation, divorce, or other commitments, because the emotional experience as a child can still feel like being left. So later in life, you start expecting very little from men, because if you never had much growing up, even a little can feel like a lot. So the benchmark becomes, he's choosing me and he hasn't left. That becomes your standard in a relationship, being chosen and not being left. So there might not be a lot of expectations on how you're being treated as long as he stays. Other women respond completely differently. Instead of lowering the expectations, they learn to only rely on themselves. And the second pattern is hyper-independence. On the surface, it looks like strength, but underneath, it's just a defense mechanism. Because if your father wasn't present or emotionally available, or you didn't feel safe, protected, or cared for, you develop the internal narrative that men are not reliable, or I cannot trust men. And when that belief forms, you learn to only rely on yourself. You become extremely independent, you struggle to ask for help, and you struggle to depend on anyone. And you feel like the only person you can truly trust is you, especially when it comes to relationships. So on one side, you still want a relationship, but on the other side, you don't feel like men are safe to rely on. And that creates a very painful internal conflict, because you still want closeness, but you don't feel safe trusting it. And the reason this creates a loop is because our beliefs shape how we see the world. If you believe men can't be trusted, your brain will constantly look for evidence to confirm that belief. So you notice men who disappoint you or your friends, men who are unfaithful, men who abandon, men who prove your belief right. And the more you experience unreliable men, the more hyper-independent you become. That eventually shows up as feeling like you have to do everything yourself, not being able to ask for help. And many people would describe it as being in your masculine energy, which is true, but it's just hyper-independence that you've developed as a defense mechanism. The third pattern is what I call the father figure projection. That's when your unmet needs from your relationship with your father are being projected onto your partner. So everything you didn't receive growing up, whether that was presence, love, support, protection, you now look for in a romantic partner. So now instead of simply wanting a partner, you might unconsciously expect someone to repair childhood wounds that weren't met. And that creates very heavy expectations in any relationship, because now your partner isn't only expected to be a partner, but he's now also expected to fulfill emotional needs that were only meant to be met by your parent. And this is what creates the dynamic we spoke about earlier, where on one side the man feels like no matter what he's doing is not enough, and on the other side the woman feels like he's still not protecting her, he's still not providing for her, and he's still not showing up in the way she expects. So let's look at the difference between a father and a partner, because you might think a father's role is to protect and provide, and a partner's role is to protect and provide. So what's actually the difference? The difference is the hierarchy. In a parent-child relationship, there's a clear hierarchy. The parent is responsible and the child is dependent. A father is not only responsible to protect and provide, but he's also responsible for a child's safety, emotional, mental, physical well-being, and overall stability. He sets the rules, he decides what's safe and what isn't, he organizes life, boundaries, guidance, structure. And a child's role is to simply explore, play, and develop. A child is meant to be free of responsibilities and worries. The only responsibility they might have is putting their toys away. So how does this parent-child dynamic show up in adult relationships, especially when someone does carry a father wound? For example, let's say a couple goes out shopping together and he gets distracted. He looks at his phone and they lose sight of each other. Objectively, that's not a big deal. But if someone carries an abandonment wound, that moment can feel much bigger emotionally. So instead of simply asking, hey, where did you go? The reaction becomes, you left me. You didn't pay attention to me. You didn't care about me. I wasn't a priority. So the reaction isn't about the situation itself, but it's about what emotional wound that situation triggered. So now a partner becomes responsible for fixing a pain that originally came from somewhere else. And of course, it's important to be mindful of each other's triggers and wounds. But essentially, those deeper wounds are something a person has to work through within themselves, through self-reflection or therapy. So another way this parent-child dynamic can show up is around responsibilities in the relationship. For example, someone might not only expect a partner to provide for the essentials, the homes, the bills, the financial stability, but also for everything else, personal expenses, holidays. But not only that, they also see them responsible for planning everything, making all the decisions. So the expectation becomes that the partner not only provides for everything, but he also plans and organizes everything, and the other person simply shows up. Now, if that dynamic is mutually agreed on, that's one thing. But if it's not discussed or not aligned, the partner can feel like they're carrying the entire relationship. And this is often when men start to ask, what do you bring to the table? And today in our culture, this has become such a controversial question, where now men who ask those questions are being described as feminine or not masculine enough. But what he's simply asking is, what is your role in this relationship? Because a healthy relationship isn't about one person carrying everything. It's about two people contributing in different ways. If one person is expected to carry all the responsibilities financially, emotionally, practically, that's when the dynamic starts looking less like a partnership and more like a parent-child dynamic. So what does a romantic adult relationship look like? How is it different from the parent-child dynamic? A romantic relationship is completely different. Two adults come together, both are responsible, both contribute. Now those contributions can look very different. They don't have to be identical. And this is something that often gets confused in the culture right now, where we believe equality is sameness. Equality doesn't mean sameness. Men and women are equal in value, but they do not offer the same things in relationships. But the key difference here is that in a romantic relationship, neither person is the parent of the other. Both people take responsibility for themselves and they support each other. And when someone unconsciously expects their partner to take on the full responsibility of a parent, that's when the relationship becomes unbalanced. Not because protection or provision are wrong, but because no adult partner can replace a parent. So the real question becomes, how do you have high standards in a relationship without turning them into unrealistic expectations? Because expecting a man to provide and protect is not unreasonable, but expecting a partner to take on the full responsibility for your emotional safety, stability, and life direction, that's something very different. And that's often where relationships begin to break down. The third point is how to know whether the issue is your expectations or his behavior. A simple place to start is to ask yourself, where do my expectations actually come from? Do they come from something I didn't receive growing up? Maybe an unmet need I had as a child that I now expect my partner to repair or compensate for? Or do my expectations come from social media and what I see online? For example, we nowadays see constantly videos of men flying out their partners to luxury destinations and making these grand romantic gestures. But interestingly, a trend came out recently where women shared that the men who did all these grand gestures, buying flowers, constantly planning trips, taking them shopping every weekend, buying them luxury items, are also the ones who ended up cheating on them. Which actually teaches us something very important, which is that romance and provision don't necessarily equal emotional safety, loyalty, and respect. So the real question is, where do my expectations come from? And if they do come from a healthy place, from your idea of what a healthy relationship looks like, the next question is he able to meet that vision of a healthy relationship? If not, it's important to ask, what does a healthy relationship look like to him? Because at the end of the day, two people don't need to have identical expectations, but they do need to understand each other's expectations and find a place where they can meet in the middle. And the final point is, what do healthy expectations actually look like? How can you maintain high standards without turning them into unrealistic expectations? The first thing I would say is stop looking at online accounts that tell you what your relationship should exactly look like. Right now, there's so many voices online that tell you he should provide 100%, he should provide 80%, he should provide for this, you should be doing this. But the truth is, every relationship, every person, and every circumstance is different. No two people are the same, and no two relationships are the same. So very general advice that is given online is now being applied to very different individual and nuanced relationships. So the first question to ask is, who's actually defining my expectations? Are they coming from your own values? Or are you looking to other people to tell you what your standards should be? The second question to ask yourself is, what do you value the most in relationships? Because right now there is such a big emphasis, especially online, on things like luxury, flowers, gifts, big gestures, romance. These things can absolutely be part of a healthy relationship, but sometimes they become so emphasized that they overshadow the healthy foundations of a relationship. Things like loyalty, respect, emotional maturity, having mutual values, compatibility, consistency. Those are the things that actually sustain a relationship long term. And protection and provision can absolutely be part of a relationship, but they don't look the same in every couple. And they shouldn't come at the expense of the core foundations of respect and emotional safety. So instead of looking externally, or even looking to me to tell you what your relationship should exactly look like, and to tell you exactly what expectations are reasonable, take a moment to sit with yourself and ask, what do I actually value in relationships? Where did those values come from? Because when those expectations are rooted in your own values and self-awareness, they're much more likely to lead to a healthy and balanced relationship. Because the goal isn't to lower your standards, it's to understand where they come from. And I would love to hear your thoughts. Which of these points stood out to you the most? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.